Hello and welcome back to the Everything is Black and White podcast. I am Andrew Musgrove and it is a pleasure to be joined by Clive Tyldesley, a legendary football commentator who had the pleasure to commentate for CBS Sports on Sunday down at Wembley as Newcastle United lifted the Carabao Cup final. We're going to get into how Clive covered that game, his thoughts on Newcastle United finally ending the wait for a major piece of silverware. But first things first, Clive, welcome back. How are you keeping? Are you well?
I'm not as well as you guys. I've had a lot of contact with a lot of good friends on Tyneside in the last few days. I'm afraid that the part of my business is to name drop. That's what I do. But I think actually one of the enduring images of the weekend will be seeing how much it meant to Alan Shearer, who is a good friend and obviously I've worked with a lot. And, I think it would be easy to be a player of legendary standing in the history of Newcastle who missed out on that feeling, to have a kind of human side that I wish it had been me, but there was no sense of that at all. I mean, that was the joy of any Newcastle fan that we saw from Alan on the day. And I think I'm always very careful to say that any football club is unique, because every football club is unique and it means something special to its own supporters and staff and players and so on. But there aren't many clubs of Newcastle's size that belong solely to one of the major cities of the UK. The great rivalries in Glasgow and Liverpool and Manchester and London and Bristol and wherever else. And obviously Tyne and Wear is Tyne and Wear, and you've got your rivalry. But it is one of those towns where there aren't Manchester United fans. You don't find Barcelona fans. You find Newcastle United fans, and that's why the victory means so much, I think, as an outsider, to the whole kind of fabric of the city and the mood of the city, and that's a wonderful thing to be a tiny part of on the day.
And you've been doing this job for many, many years, and obviously we all hoped that at one point Newcastle United would win a cup. But being there at Wembley on Sunday, were you surprised at all at just how much emotion there was around in the terraces, and then of course back here on Tyneside as well?
Well, I think you've got to be careful. It's not for me to tell you how to enjoy this success, but this has got to be the start of something for Newcastle. I tried to say at some stage in the commentary that this is a club that's got everything else. It's got its own identity. It's got its own history. It's got a super stadium. I know you're looking at either improving or moving, but actually everything but a trophy. And you finished second in the Premier League. You played in the Champions League. You played in cup finals. You've had some of the finest players that we've seen in the UK wearing the black and white stripes in the modern era. It's just been that one final step, but that step has got to be it's got to be a breakthrough now. It's not enough. One trophy since 1969, if it had been won in 1970 or 2004 or whenever, it's not enough for Newcastle United. And, this is a weight, I think, lifted off shoulders. And I think you really, really should enjoy it. And Grandpa, who's been going on about 1969 for ages, and Dad and Mum, who've been going on about how Kevin, Keegan and all that kind of stuff, they're all part of it, because, as I said in the commentary, this is the first triumph that probably Newcastle fans can truly remember. And and it's actually quite nice as a pause that you've got these 10, 11 days to get ready for a proper homecoming. That actually even the guys that are not on international duty are not in town. Everybody's gone. So they're getting a breather from the kind of cabin fever, which you must all be enjoying. And then the next game is a home game. It's not immediate. You know, if you've been playing this Wednesday, it would have all almost been too fast. And you've actually all got a little bit of a chance to reflect. I think it's a shame, in a sense, that the likes of Guimaraes and Tonali are playing again in the next couple of days. It would be, I think you've got to accept that one of the big factors last weekend was that Newcastle had played 9 fewer games than Liverpool, 5 fewer than since the turn of the year. That was a weary Liverpool performance, but it wasn't. It was a dynamic Newcastle performance from the beginning. But it's really important now that dynamism remains for the rest of the season. That you definitely finish in a Champions League place. And that, you know, hopefully you go on from here, that this is not the end of something, it's the start of something. So,
yeah, fingers crossed. And you know, a lot of people are referring to Sir Alex Ferguson's first trophy at Manchester United and the first trophy at Manchester City, and obviously we all know what those two teams went on to achieve. So fingers crossed we can get something.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the extraordinary things, and I had it at my fingertips because I'd thought about it, and I know Eddie reasonably well. He is one of the good guys. He's everything that you see. That is him. But when you think of the 20-odd managers that Newcastle United have had who haven't been able to make this breakthrough, weirdly, some of the finest names in Liverpool's history, you know, Dalglish and Souness and Benitez. And then you think of, obviously, Sir Bobby, who is very dear to me. You know, I support a charity of his out in Portugal and know the family really well. Think of Jack Charlton. You think of, I mean, okay, Ruud Gullit wasn't your greatest manager, but he's a great name in the game. Obviously, Ardiles is a great name in the game, and that's, yeah. I mean, that when Eddie reflects on the fact that all these wonderful predecessors, many came very close but didn't manage what he's done. I'm not getting into the statue debate. Don't even ask me. That's up to you guys. But it's actually heartening for me in this kind of cutthroat dragon's den age that we live in. And, you know, some thoughts on Gareth Southgate's speech yesterday, and, you know, this kind of weird online mad world that we're in, that one of the good guys, one of the really good guys, and he's done it his way. And there must have been times in the last few years when you've been dying for him to show a bit more emotion, you know, be a bit more Conte or Simeone. I'm not having those managers. That's all for show. That's all for them. Eddie does it his way because he's concentrating, because he's thinking, because he is serving Newcastle United's best interests by trying to work out what's going to happen next. And I think I'm really, really heartened that a good man has done it his way in a really kind of measured and understated way. Because you know, I mean, Fergie probably wouldn't be a particularly good example of that, but you know, it's kind of Sir Bobby's way. You know, that's care. He cares, and you can see he cares, and you can certainly see he cared at Wembley. But he's not playing to the camera. He's not playing to that close-up camera that's always there next to a manager. And you know, some of them, when the red light comes on, they're giving it the old, yeah. And he doesn't play that game. And he does it the best that he can on behalf of Newcastle United. And somehow he's galvanized the team to produce that wonderful performance. I actually said at one stage, after 70 years, any old victory would have done. But it wasn't. It was a really, really stirring bit. 2-1 didn't even begin to do justice to how much better than Liverpool Newcastle were on the day. I'm still not convinced that the disallowed goal should have been disallowed, but maybe the goal a minute later wouldn't have happened if that one had. But it was a stirring performance, a performance to remember. You've got so many recollections from it, and garnished by a goal from a local hero. And a goal from a guy who could be one of the greatest players ever to play for Newcastle United if he hangs around and carries on doing what he's doing at the moment. I'm sure he will.
Yeah, and Eddie Howe said that in his press conference that there are ways to win finals, and this was quite the way to do it because they were so dominant, and obviously Liverpool did score very late on. But I was sitting there and thinking, Newcastle United are not going to concede a second, and if you go back to early in the season and Newcastle conceded that late in the game, I'm maybe a little bit worried. But I just thought they were so good throughout in terms of their game management and their physicality and their commitment and desire. They just seemed to want it more than Liverpool, and that counted for a lot on the day, I thought.
Yeah, and the Chiesa goal was almost part of the story. That suddenly the close-ups were of people with their hands to their faces, and it's easy said now, but it didn't look like it was going to happen. I thought Van Dijk was amazing on the day, but he was playing on his own at times. But no, in every other position on the field, in every other aspect of the game, Newcastle United were dominant. I thought the club got the day right. Yeah, I mean, Newcastle United fans are not the kind of fans who need to be handed a flag or a scarf before a game. It's not like that at St James's, but it was again one of the enduring images which you'll have forever and a day will be of all the scarves. It was and it gave a completely different backdrop to that end of the stadium to the other end. And I'm sure it was one of those little things which helped to lift the players. And I mean, they gave an awful lot on the day, and some very outwardly, like Joe Linton, which was fantastic. That was there was one moment when he didn't realise he went to the Liverpool end and did some cheerleading. I'm not sure that moment particularly worked, but it was fantastic to see a player caring in the same way that you do. I think Kieran Trippier's performance right from the outset. I mean, he had one of the most sort of challenging jobs on the day and did it absolutely magnificently. And again, from the bottom of his heart. But the guys that just sort of go about their job in almost in an Eddie Howe way, they're still giving as much. You don't have to kiss the badge to care, and everything about it. I mean, the class that Guimaraes and Tonali brought to the game in the centre of the field. I thought Tino was really good. I mean, I think that. I'm assessing things before the game and wondering, and that's part of your prep. I don't think Nick Pokes looked truly match fit, and I did wonder whether it was the right call. He was wonderful. I mean, the big punches that he came and made, the save from Jones was a big save, an important stage in the game, and same with Tino. Even at West Ham last week, I thought you really do look like a right back player having to play at left back. And it was just, there was a wonderful irony that, the goal came from a left-footed cross from your right-footed left back who doesn't really want to be there. And it's such a shame that Lewis couldn't even be there on the day, that's where he is in his rehab. But all the questions that you might have had before the game were answered during that game. And it means that you go on with a real hardcore to build on. I mean, there isn't anybody in that starting 11 that you would be unhappy representing Newcastle in a Champions League game next season, for instance. And you've got Gordon, and you've got Hall, and you've got Botman to come back, and maybe Jamal too. So there's suddenly, whoa, wait a minute, we've got 15 good players. And all the others, that Joe Willock will do a turn. That Sean Longstaff will do a turn. You've actually got 17, 18, 19 already. And hopefully, I don't ask me about profit and sustainability. I don't understand it any better than the next guy. But, I mean, surely there is a capacity now for Newcastle not ever to be into a position where you've got to sell a good young player because he's come through the ranks that, hopefully, and I think a lot of that is to do with the money you generate. Obviously, the commercial side enables you to make a larger percentage, the same percentage of your turnover in terms of loss, which is kind of where the club want to be, so that the owners can invest, and then that, the attraction of that, of hopefully a Champions League place, will hopefully make it a really interesting summer for you. But you've got a real platform now, a real base of players who, on a big stage, produce big performances when it really mattered, and that will do them all a world of good.
Yep, certainly so. And you mentioned one man just before, Dan Burn, who of course got the opener, and what a tremendous header from that distance to get the direction on it into the back of the net. And just what a week for him. And it could turn out to be an even better fortnight if he ends up making his debut for England. But to get that call up at his age, to score in a cup final for his boyhood club, to then lift the trophy for his boyhood club, and then go off to England and potentially make his England debut. Few players have had better fortnights than him.
Yeah, and the fact that 25 years ago he was a Newcastle fan, making the long trip home with a bad result. And obviously the story is extraordinary, coming back 18 years after being released and playing for the club. And of course, you only have to think back to the final 2 years ago. He's playing at left back, and I'm sure that he didn't want to particularly be playing, or he certainly preferred to have been playing where he played last weekend. So it's a really good story. It's funny. You look back on the commentary, and I don't think my commentary of that guy. I was commentating, for people who don't know, I commentate on for CBS Sports, who've got the network rights to Champions League and to Football League, actually, in the USA. So I was commentating for CBS Sports, and my commentary after in the immediate aftermath of Dan's goal was that I think I said that is an accident that's been waiting to happen to Liverpool. And it was bizarre that Alexis McAllister seemed to continue to be marking me, even though Dan was causing all kinds of havoc even before that. And I did get round to the fact that it's a wonderful header and it's a wonderful moment and a great story. But it threw my mind back to December, when I was fortunate enough to commentate on the 3-3 game at St James's for Amazon Prime. And if you remember how that game went, Newcastle were much better than Liverpool in the first half, led 1-0 at the break. And I did say a couple of times during the first half that Newcastle will know that Liverpool will not be this bad, basically, in the second half. And I got a bit of stick on Twitter. I'm fortunately touched this whole wooden head. I tend to escape a lot of the abuse that some of my brethren get. But I was getting some stick for not giving Newcastle credit and actually painting a picture of Liverpool underperforming. Well, of course, midway through the second half, I was right. Liverpool came out and played a lot better in the second half. And Fabian Schär scored that wonderful goal at the end. And it was probably a fair result and a really, really wonderful match. But it just sort of remind me when I listened back to my Dan Burn commentary this weekend, that the very first thing I said is that, Liverpool should have picked him up, basically, or had somebody else marking him. But they are the perils of my job, the perils of Eddie's job, the perils of the player's job. That's what you live in the moment, and there's nothing's recorded. It's all live. And when it's live to an audience of millions, then you got to face the jeopardy that goes with that. I'm a lucky boy to do the job that I do.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you as well about commentating for an American audience, because something else you said during the game has gone a little bit viral over here, and it was when Ant and Dec came onto the big screen, and you said, "Are they big in America?" They're not big anywhere, actually. They're both about 5'6". I mean, we'll get into that comment in a moment, but just
I know them both well, and so I could say that. Yeah.
Have they been in touch? Did they realise you'd said that?
I mean, I know them because I work with them. I've got a few big numbers in my phone. I haven't got their numbers in my phone. They can, if anybody knows them, they can have a commentary chart. By the way, more than happy to send them on. And Sam Fender too. Apparently, Chris Stark's a friend of mine. Apparently, Sam Fender's interested in ones. So anyway, yeah. I mean, funnily enough, I did do some research on US sports franchises that have had to wait a long time. Cleveland Browns, funny enough, are currently going through a very similar kind of time frame to what you guys have been through, dating back to the 1960s. Interestingly, the famous Boston Red Sox, which is the Fenway Sports Group, which is Liverpool, that there's a very famous story in American sport when they let the Bambino go, let Babe Ruth go, and didn't win anything for ages and ages after that. And there is a clip on X at the moment, which shouldn't really be there because somebody's put up a little edit of like 15 minutes of our coverage of the game itself, which really shouldn't be being broadcast in this territory, but who cares? And I mentioned in that the Golden State Warriors had to wait 40 years for their golden age. So yeah, these things happen. They come around, and part of my job commentating to the US is obviously to try to relate what they're watching to what the sport that they watch every week. I mean, CBS are really, really good in terms of the main message is to commentate as if you were commentating to a British European audience. I commentate in yards rather than meters and Fahrenheit rather than Celsius for an American audience. I probably would convert a transfer fee into dollars. Not that that's a huge conversion anymore. And that's it really. And then you call it as it is. But obviously, if you can think in terms of an American audience, and when you get a close up of the two most famous guys in British TV, and you ask yourself, wait a minute, they'll be thinking, who the hell is this? Yeah, I mean, it's I did notice that me trying to explain who the hell Anton Deck are to people in Middle America, is a challenge.
And in terms of how you signed off on the final whistle, I'm not going to play the clip because I don't want to get a copyright strike, but I have got the quote here. And you said, "No more talk of 1969. 2025 is the heir of Newcastle's last major trophy. The long wait is over." And it was just very simple and very effective, and I really enjoyed the way you brought the final whistle. You've brought the game to a close. I mean, you've already alluded to it. There's no planning for it, is there? You just got to say what comes natural to you in terms of what you're watching.
People often say, do you script it in advance? No, but do you think about it? Yes, and I do make some rough notes on what the significance of a Newcastle victory, and I've got rough notes on the significance of a Liverpool victory. But they are just a couple of kind of bullet points, the kind of just to try to give some context to the moment, because I think, and it's the same with the trophy presentation. I think during that little break when they went back to the touchline and Kate and the guys were discussing the game, I wasn't just gazing around with my mouth open. I was scribbling some notes for what I might say, in the trophy presentation. I mean, if somebody drops the trophy or whatever, then obviously you say something different. You're watching the pictures. It's very important that you're watching the pictures. And inevitably, in the seconds following the final whistle in the cup final, the match director, the most important person in the stadium, who I got the impression listening to her was a Newcastle fan. You might want to try and get in touch with her, because I was listening to the Sky director. And she's going to put up some shots of Liverpool. She's going to put some shots of gloomy Liverpool faces. So you've got to be light on your feet and respond to the pictures, because it is a visual medium, and that's the most important part of it. You can turn me down, you can't turn the pictures off, not and enjoy it. So yeah, I mean, I did have some thoughts in my head, and I wanted to try to capture the moment the best I could. I mean, in terms of stats, I don't think I've ever done a game quite like it. And all the stats were out there. Everybody knew that it wasn't just 1969 and 1955. It was the 9 visits to Wembley, the 9 losing visits to Wembley. It was the 17 games against Liverpool. I used a stat at kickoff that Newcastle were trying to win their first major trophy since 1969. Liverpool were trying to win their 40th since 1969. I mean, that you know, they're the stats which I think give some context to the kind of romance in the story, the romance that you're all enjoying now. You know, it wouldn't have been as great if you'd beaten Wycombe Wanderers. You know, you've beaten the champions elect. The champions elect have actually played really well in the second half against PSG the previous week. Okay, over the 2 legs, maybe PSG shaded it, but they're a bloody good team. It's not as if Liverpool had dropped off to a point where there was any inevitability in Newcastle winning. Newcastle were second favourites at kickoff. Make no mistake about that. And if Liverpool did look a little tired and flat on the day, it was because they were facing a team that played with the energy and dynamism and belief and motivation that Newcastle did. And Newcastle overpowered Liverpool. They outran Liverpool, and in the end, they completely outclassed them. And that's what makes it such a special memory for everybody. It wasn't, I mean, Liverpool won the competition last year with a header from a corner in the 118th minute at the end of a game which could have gone either way. There was a fantastic story because they had loads of kids on the field, all that kind of stuff. They won it the time before that on penalties. I mean, it's great. You know, if you'd have taken it, you know, after 70 years, you'd have taken it. But to win in style and to win with so many stories attached to the victory, I think it really, really will be indelible memories for forever. And whatever you go on to achieve in the next few years, I think this will always be a really, really special way. It's talking about the Manchester United final 2 years ago. Our commentary chart, the commentary chart that I produced for that game, we made available on our website. No Manchester United fans bought that. They're Manchester United. That their memories are 1999 and 2000. And their memories are winning the Champions League. They're not beating Newcastle in a final when Newcastle were probably the better team, where the second goal was a great big loopy deflection. First goal, still not sure it was onside. That actually it wasn't enough for Manchester United fans, that victory. Their memory, the memory of their generation has been made before Eric Ten Hag and Ruben Amorim and all these guys came into the building. This is your Fergie time. This is, and I hope it is. I hope it is the start of something, because I think whatever happens in the next few years, this will be a moment that Newcastle fans always treasure.
Yeah, indeed. And I guess, like you say, when you're good pals with Alan Shearer, but also you've done this job for as long as you have, you know, those stories and the realization of what it actually means to Newcastle United, it's not unknown to someone like you, because of,
like Alan Oliver and Mick Lowes and the guys on my side, the wonderful woman who used to do the tea in the media room, that just the feeling of coming up and covering games at St James's, which was a little bit different from anywhere else, and they say it's a little different in Glasgow. It's a little different in Merseyside. There are certain parts of the country where football just kind of means a little bit more, and but I think about all of that invested loyalty and emotion that you guys give to your football club because it's your club, it's the town's club, sits there right in the city centre. I mean, how many Premier League clubs are there so close to the city centre? It's there. It's there. You drive past it every day, and you know, I don't put anything on my room bill, but I usually stay in the hotel, which is overlooking the stadium there. And yeah, you wake up and open your curtains, and it's there. Sir Bobby's there in the corner, and it is part of the whole fabric of the city. And that, you know, coming back to where we started. I mean, great is an overused word in football, but Alan Shearer has been a great player for England and Newcastle and Blackburn Rovers. He's been a great player, and you know, for him to have achieved everything that he has achieved, and to care so much about his boyhood team, and that was evident when he came back to play for you. But I mean, for it still to be in his heart like that. You don't get that at every football club. You really don't. And then there are so many special touchstones which I want you all to kind of remember and treasure. And as I said, this little kind of hiatus that we've got now before the trophy parade, before the next home game, before the push for a Champions League place begins again in earnest. I think you should all really, really enjoy it and reflect on it, and soak it up.
Well, that's what you said as well in the aftermath of the full-time whistle. You said, and they can celebrate Newcastle as one of those special cities, just a little bit different from any other in England or anywhere. A party town with a reason to party. And I think at that moment, actually, Alan was on the screen as you said that. But I thought that just summed it up absolutely perfectly. And over the last few days, being back from Wembley, there's just a lovely buzz, and people are really just enjoying walking around and not quite believing it's happened. But you know, and obviously that the parade, which will happen in a week or so's time, will be something special as well. But I thought that was a really nice way to kind of sum up the city.
I'm very, very aware of stereotypes. You know, on a serious level in football commentary, it's very, very important. And there's the kind of stereotype of the short skirt down the big market in mid-December. The guys taking their tops off on a cold Tuesday night at Stoke. Listen, it's fine, and I think you all understand that it's a bit of a badge of honour for Newcastle upon Tyne, and that's fine. But it shouldn't be a badge of honour that's the only badge of honour. You know, that's all the rest of the world thinks about when somebody mentions Newcastle. But it is a place where, yeah, you know how to have a good time, and you're not frightened to have a good time, and that's. I mean, there's nothing. The good. If I often say, if a political party or a religion could motivate people in the way that football does, it would be bloody dangerous. For one thing, it's unreal, and it's the reason I've got a job is that during the 90 minutes that your football team is playing, you're not yourself. You're really not, and that's why I can kind of live with some of that abuse which sort of comes the way of the commentator, because I know you're not yourself. You'll be fine. You won't be abusing me tomorrow because you'll be back at work, and you know that you'll be back on planet Earth. But during those 90 minutes, that's not where you are. You know, I came up to here's a sobering thought. I came up to a Tyne-Wear derby. Well, Alan Pardew was the manager, and he's a good friend, and he'd invited me up, and one of our boys was at Durham Uni, and he came along with a friend, and it was a lunchtime kickoff, and Alan had arranged for us to go in the kind of whatever VIP bit, and there was a bit of a lunch before or a brunch, and we had a great time, and his wife and his two daughters were with us. Didn't see him on the day. You were 2 down at half time. And there was a guy tore his season ticket up in front of Alan, and I'm sat with his wife and daughters. They didn't come out for the second half. They didn't come back. I'm in the director's area. They didn't come out for the second half. They're kind of the moments you've got to remember now. Just you know how bad it feels when something like that happens, and that's what makes this so special. That's part of supporting a football team. It's something that I don't have anymore. I had it when I was a kid. I had a boyhood team and everything, but I got started work, and yeah, I am a genuine neutral. It goes out of me. But as a neutral, from time to time, you come across a club at a moment in a match with a story where you think, glad they've won that. Yeah, really good. Really, really pleased that they've done. Deserved it. Important that you deserved it. If Liverpool had dominated and you'd scuffed a deflected goal, I wouldn't be thinking this way. But the fact that you actually played like trophy winners on the big day when it really, really mattered, and Newcastle are not going to get a chance, 3 times every season. The treble's not next. Sorry, it's not. But I think the next major trophy is not far away, and I do believe that what happened last Sunday at Wembley will be a huge part of the club's kind of CV now to go on and do this again. Now you know what it feels like, and you'll never get tired of it. But the first one is when you remember all this, and Newcastle's a long way from anywhere, An away match at Leeds is a long way back to Newcastle, let alone an away match in London or at Southampton or Bristol or wherever the places you've come back from, with nothing to show for it except a hole in your bank account and your heart. And I think it is worth remembering all of that this week before you get those black and white scarves out and get out in the town a week on Saturday, and then for the first match back. Is it Brentford, is it?
It is Brentford, yeah.
Big game. I mean, that core now, it's a weird Premier League this season, a very, very weird Premier League. And, nobody could have foreseen what the fall off in Manchester City. Nobody could have imagined that Tottenham and Manchester United would be the basket cases they are in the same season. And Chelsea are kind of whatever, they're a different kind of basket case. But that new core in the top half, that Brighton, Bournemouth, Brentford, Nottingham Forest, Fulham core, they are all tough fixtures now. They have all got forward players who I see a lot of Champions League football. I think you could put Mitoma, you could put Elanga, you could put Ouattara, you could put those players in pretty much any mainland European Champions League team and improve a lot of them. And that's the company that you're keeping at the moment. And you've got to beat 5 or 6 of them to the places that are on offer. And I was joking with Steve Wilson, the BBC TV commentator, before the game on Sunday, that you match the day, you got nothing left. It looks like the 3 that are going. It looks like Liverpool have won it. You've now got the race for 5th. And I was saying that slightly ironically, but the race for 5th is fascinating and it's exciting and it's high stakes. It means an awful lot now to Newcastle United to make sure that you're in. It looks like it's going to be the top 5. Make sure you don't want to be playing the Conference League. Jeepers. Not now.
Fingers crossed they can get that Champions League place. We had a question sent in from one of our listeners, and then Chris, first off, he complimented the way you signed the game off. He says, great words. And he also asks, where do the noise levels rank in games he's seen at Wembley and elsewhere in terms of the noise on Sunday, at the final?
I'm not the best person to ask that. I wear a pair of headphones. The headphones don't block out the noise, but I've got a panel full of buttons in front of me, and I can mix the right level of my voice, of the crowd effects, and of the director's voice. So I'm listening to the director's voice. I've also got the added joy of the VAR, an occasional comment coming back from Stanford in the US, where the whole program was being produced from. So I probably am not the right person to give you an honest. It'd be easy for me to say, "Oh yeah, fantastic, great, best ever." I think Wembley, the noise doesn't doesn't quite gather like it does in a more compact club stadium. So it's more the visuals really. I think the club got it right, and everything looked right on the day. The guys looked great when they came out, didn't they? And I thought the whole kind of experience was of the black and white scarves at one end, and then kind of dotted red here and there at the other end. Which, doesn't take away from the fact that a night at Anfield is still really special. Although I was there for the PSG game last week. It's not quite what it was. I don't think we want football to be quite as raw and as raucous as when I was a boy. I think it is. It's just a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more corporate. And so, but that it does. The emotions are still the same. The emotions that are stirred, and I think probably where the noise will be most evident will be a week on Saturday when you're out in the town and the bus is coming around. Goodness knows how many people will turn up, but you should go. I mean, you can, and I'm sure there'll be places on the route. There always are where it's only a couple deep, and you can take your sons and daughters and lift them on your shoulders and have a good look at something. I've got some great memories of trophy parades. As a fan, I went. I've been on the top of the bus as a reporter. They're fantastic occasions, and I think that's probably where the noise will be. That's where you'll feel it.
It'll be a special, special day. And just a reminder, guys, that this episode is sponsored by NordVPN. If you click the link in your podcast description box, you can get an exclusive discounted offer on your plan. And we've also thrown a celebration party on Thursday, the 27th of March. You get your tickets now. James Perch and Ryan Taylor will be coming along as we take the podcast on the road to the Tyneside Irish Centre. So again, hit the link in the podcast description box to get your tickets for that. And we also want to shout out to something Clive kind of does on the side, commentarycharts.com. He's kindly sent a couple in the post, and we're going to give two away. There we go.
They're the match notes from Wembley. We've got them in A4. We got them in A3. You get a little letter kind of explaining what they are in there too. You can either have them rolled or framed. Commentarycharts.com. There is only one other Newcastle chart on there, so we've been waiting for that. And that's the away 5-0, the United win, the Philippe Albert and all that. We've got the commentary chart from that night too. This one's special, and one or two of those big names I was dropping earlier on are keen to have one. So if you want one, commentarycharts.com is where you'll find them.
Yeah, I'll pop the link into the podcast description box, and we'll launch a competition next week to give a couple away as well. Thanks to Clive for doing that. Just a couple more questions then, Clive, before I let you go out and enjoy the sunshine. Eddie Howe becomes the first English manager since Harry Redknapp to lift a major trophy, 2008. I mean, when you say that back, and you've got all these stats, from a Newcastle point of view, it's also the first time they've lifted the League Cup. But that in itself is quite the stat as well. He's the first English manager to do that in so long.
It's interesting you say that, because I had that stat there ready. First Englishman since Steve McLaren to win this trophy and so on. I didn't use it. I didn't think it was nothing to do with English managers, and it was all about his I hate the word journey in that sense, but his time at Newcastle, which has been, it came with, I think pressure's an overused word in sport, in life, really. What's pressure is expectations, isn't it? And obviously the arrival of the new owners and Eddie following on from Steve Bruce came with a huge expectation. And it has created a bit of a pressure cooker for him. And I just feel as if he's handled it with all that kind of dignity and at times diplomacy, but just the decency that is the man. And they were the qualities that I wanted to eulogize about, really, in the aftermath of the victory. I think I think that first English manager since 2008 to win a major is a quiz question. Just like 1969 used to be a quiz question, but isn't a quiz question anymore.
And just finally, the last time you popped onto the podcast, I spoke to you about the FA Cup semi-final Newcastle played in against Tottenham when Shearer scored an absolute beauty of a goal, and your line was, that's how he dreamt it last night. And I think actually in the mix zone, Dan Burn was asked the exact same question. You popped into my mind when that was asked of Dan Burn. I mean, wonderful memories, but I'm assuming it's going to be nice now that, if Newcastle United fans stop you, they may well now stop you and say, "Oh, you were there when Newcastle finally lifted the cup after all these years."
They might do in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm not sure they're going to do it in Gateshead. Yeah, I mean, I'm always surprised by how many people have actually watched Champions League games on CBS. I never ask how you know that, how you do that. It's none of my business. But I've been very lucky, really, at a time in my career when obviously I got moved on from ITV and stuff, and Champions League was a big part of that period in my career. And so to continue to do the Champions League for a network outfit, and they do it properly. We've got a really good team with Thierry Henry and Jamie Carragher and Micah Richards and Kate Scott. They throw the works at it, and it's lovely to be a part of it. So, yeah, with the other commentary team for CBS is headed by Ray Hudson, who is obviously originally played for Newcastle, I think, didn't he, in 1864, something like that. And when you had a big Champions League game, who was your first? Was it PSG? The first home game, yeah. And I'd been carded for it, and then suddenly I got this call from Stanford saying Ray wants to do it. Yeah, okay, whatever. I want to do it too. But I suppose I thought about it. I actually gave him a mention during the commentary because he'd have loved to have been called, and it would have been a different kind of commentary. You'd certainly remembered it if Ray had been calling it. But yeah, it's nice to be a part of it, and nice to some people feel as if the words that I found did it justice, and if it's, we don't score the goals. I can't head a ball, so I certainly didn't score the first, and I could have hit it 100 times and not hit it as crisply as Isak hit that second. So it's not me. I don't score the goals. I need the material to work with. Newcastle United gave me the material to work with. If you get a fantastic occasion, then, as my great mentor, Reg Guttridge, used to say, it deserves words of its own. Incredible, amazing, fantastic is not enough. You've got to find the words which are special to that unique occasion. And that's the challenge for the commentator. And if anybody feels if you've succeeded in doing that, then I've done my job.
Fantastic. And just to sign off then, Clive, can you just give me your kind of lasting memory from that final in which Newcastle finally ended the long wait for silverware?
I'll tell you my lasting memory. This will spot it all. He's nearly 30. My 29-year-old son was born in Birkenhead when I was working in local radio on Merseyside. He is a Liverpool fan. He lives in Copenhagen now. And he came over. I got him a ticket for the final, him and a couple of his mates. And so when I put my microphone down and I had a taxi sort of waiting for us about a mile away from Wembley, so because the first mile's easier to walk than it is to drive, and he met me at the car. So my lasting memory is the look on his face. And that's football, that's football. We didn't turn up. Yeah, okay, whatever, get in. I'm happy. I've done my job. But yeah, I mean, for every joyous Newcastle fan that left Wembley on Sunday, there was many miserable Liverpool fans, and you've been there. You know what it's like. That's the communion of football. That's what we all share and know and recognise. And I'm just the guy sitting on the fence, trying to stay neutral and trying to tell what I see. And what I saw on Sunday was a really inspired and inspiring Newcastle performance, and a very, very deserved victory.
There we go. Clive, thank you very much for sparing the time and popping on to the Everything is Black and White podcast. You guys watching and listening, you know what to do by now. Hit thumbs up, hit subscribe, get into the comments. I'll get back to each and every single one of you. I hope you've enjoyed the episode, and head over to chroniclelive.co.uk for all the latest Newcastle United news. I shall see you guys very soon.